February 27th, 2022 marked the 26th anniversary of the Pokémon franchise, and as usual, they decided to grace us all with a new Pokémon Presents to celebrate. Of course, that'll be fun like always, but I mean, they just released Legends Arceus less than a month before, so it's probably just gonna be some updates to that, some mobile game stuff, maybe a new Unite character, or the reveal of the next generation coming this year. Well, that was an easy bingo card. Yes, Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet, the kickoff games for the 9th generation, were revealed, coming to the Switch in late 2022. We can all act like this was surprising, but really, they've been releasing a new generation every 3 years since Black and White, and why else would Legends have been in that weird January release spot if not for something new being on the horizon? The starters have everyone in good spirits, as they're a pretty solid bunch, with one god amongst men, I might add. The region appears to be based on Spain this time around, which means it's pretty likely to share at least one border with Kalos, and I'd love to see them take advantage of that. Overall, it just feels really good to have a Pokemon game that pretty much everyone seems to be excited about again. And thankfully, since the only two things in this world that I fear are my favorite series going open world and Twitter.com, I have nothing to worry about. I know that nowadays saying you're going open world is like saying your video game is gonna exist. Your kids will get made fun of in school for not being open world. But for Pokemon, that's huge, even after the half step that was Legends Arceus. The whole main series has been built upon that original golden formula for its entire life, and this is the first time a set of title games threatens to truly change that. But honestly, after Sword and Shield turned out to be a little tiny bit very shitty in many people's eyes, a list compiling all the people who are happy about this fact looks a lot like the word everybody. Pay no mind to the list of people that aren't happy. Look, I've got no problem with Pokemon trying something new, and I don't think this is gonna kill the franchise or anything ridiculous like that, but as much as I like Legends, I don't want something I like to replace something I love. And I do have legitimate fear that the version of the series that only I still seem to be on board with is gonna be relegated to nothing but remakes and nostalgia. Regardless of how you feel about each gameplay style, I think we can all agree that the classic's closing act being Sword and Shield would be a miserable outcome. But the more I thought about the whole thing, the more I realized that completely switching over to all Legends all the time is a dangerous enough idea that I kinda doubt they'll try it, and they really should be trying to find something that both new and old fans can enjoy, something in between Legends and Classic. And who better than one of their most annoyingly passionate fans to figure out how to do it? So today, that's exactly what I plan to do. As a lifelong fan of Pokemon who adores the Classic gameplay style and also thinks that Legends Arceus is pretty dang neat, I'll be looking at everything I, myself, personally, would do to make Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as perfect of Pokemon games as possible, taking both types of fans into account. Do keep in mind as we do this that our only trailer at this point in time showed us very, very little, meaning we're gonna be speculating about even the most basic aspects of the game, and some of those base level assumptions might not even turn out to be the case. I assume that gyms will be back, but maybe they won't be. I assume that trainers will be everywhere again, but maybe they won't be. The point is that this is all just for fun. Please don't take anything I say too seriously. That being said, if Naked Burmy is not in the game, consider my pre-order f***ing canceled. First up, we need to establish how the progression system is even gonna work. The previous 8 generations were pretty much all formatted the same way, with a large group of towns and cities connected by linear routes. And while some regions would occasionally have a point where you could choose from a couple different directions to go, most of the time the game's narrative would push you down one specific path. So we're taking that and making it open world. What could possibly go wrong? Right off the bat, I think that open world as a concept kind of prohibits us from basing any of the campaign structure off of Legends Arceus too heavily. That game would make absolutely no sense if you could just do anything wherever and whenever you wanted. It relies too heavily on pushing you in specific directions. On the flip side, the linearity of the classic style means that as long as you set it up correctly, you could theoretically rearrange most of the events of the game into completely different orders without too much work. So I think that should be our base. We'll have a bunch of different cities with people to talk to, gyms to fight, and evil team shenanigans to stop, just like usual, but the game will scale the levels of both wild and trainer Pokemon based on how many of the area's story arcs and or gyms you've completed, thus letting you challenge it all in any order you want, while generally encouraging you to do one chunk at a time. Areas in the vein of Legends Arceus, cities and general progression in the vein of classic stuff. Next, let's talk about what I consider to be the biggest problem with modern Pokemon games. The routes of the last 2 generations have been absolute dog water. I would love to live in a place like Kalos, like Unova or Sinnoh. I don't even want to visit Galar, because what the f even happens there? Take a moment now to think about what it is that you do in a playthrough of Sword and Shield, other than contemplate. You get a gym badge, and then you walk to the next town, where you get a gym badge, and then you walk to the next town. Rinse and repeat for basically the entire journey. No longer are we going on an adventure, we are now on a Disneyland tour, and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is nowhere in sight. Remember that time in X and Y, when after getting your first gym badge, you got to explore a massive city just for the sake of exploring it? Then you went up a cool, unique route with roller skating escalators everywhere that included rails for you to use your roller skates on, and then you went through a neat scenic route to get to a mansion where you helped them solve their problems, and then you went to Ambret Town so you could ride a Rhyhorn along the mountainside and stop Team Flare from f***ing with the fossils, and then you finally got around to grabbing another gym badge. Remember that time in Sun and Moon where you walked to the next trial? These little, for lack of a better descriptor, mandatory side quests don't seem necessary to include at first glance, but I personally find that they go a huge way to making the journey more fun. Of course, a lot of this could be solved by just giving us an actually good, proactive evil team again, but I think it's crucial that no matter what makes you stop, it does it for the right reason. Po Town could have been the absolute coolest part of Sun and Moon, but it falls completely and utterly flat for me because I just don't care. I'm only doing this because I'm supposed to. I mean, Christ, I'd let Team Skull win if I could, because at least they know how to stop talking. Similarly, if you want to complete Pokemon Red and Blue, you have to foil Team Rocket's takeover of Silphco. But it's not because one of the characters said, "Help me, Pokemon Kenobi, you're my only hope." It's because you want to help people out and stop these bastards, and or because it's in the way of what you want to do. It's so much less artificial. At the end of the day, becoming the champion is pretty much every game's main goal, but the narrative is more than the literal story being told, so having more to do than just get badge after badge is crucial. And since we're going open world, maybe the game could even experiment with the concept of changing fates, in which doing one arc before another causes the way things turn out to be completely different. Hey, we really needed you here when Team Jalapeno was ransacking our Pokeball manufacturing facility, but you decided to go round up a bunch of missing Miltank for that guy in Cespera City before us, so now you'll have to catch the evil team while they're escaping, leaving us townspeople to spend the rest of the game putting the factory back together. If we took this evolution of the classic style for the bigger plot points and had all sorts of side quests scattered throughout the more open areas, there would always be fun and rewarding things for you to do, which goes an infinitely long way to improving games that could theoretically still exist with just nothing to do, where the big open areas are about as empty as normal routes. This whole thing is the kind of idea so great it feels a little too good to be true, but hey, it's not impossible, and we're talking about making the games as amazing as they can be, so I think it's an idea that they both could and should definitely look into. And why stop there? There are so many simple things they could do to make the open areas so much more fun, and I know we're thinking of the same one right now. Bringing back HMs. Hey, what are you doing with that? Okay, let me be clear. I am not in any way implying that I want shitty required moves that I can't easily delete from my Pokemon coming back. What I am implying is that route design was a lot better when we had them. Fans complained about HMs so vocally and for so long that I think when Game Freak finally bit the bullet and removed them, they kinda thought, well, now that we don't have them, we don't need cut trees or strength boulders or smashable rocks, and their conclusion to that thought was replacing them with nothing. As if the average Alola and Galar route wasn't bad enough, now you see everything there is to see in your first view of it. Alola does still have this design mentality here and there, and there are a couple of locations that I think hugely benefit from it, but it's not nearly as prevalent as I think it should be, and Galar kinda proves that they didn't really see them as much more than justification for Poké Rides existing. Sure, sometimes all cutting down a tree would lead to is an item, but you could also find in the same game a waterfall that opened up an entirely new hidden chunk of the route, which was just about the coolest thing ever. The Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl Wilds Helping Out system, the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee secret techniques, or finally making it so that Pokemon that should be able to do an action can just do it. I don't know how much I really care. I just think they made the areas more interesting and gave you a good reason to really check every nook and cranny for little surprises. Or maybe I just put up with them for so long, now I'm starting to go through withdrawals. I need another hit. But now for probably the most controversial thing I'm going to throw out in this entire video. It's time to talk about wild Pokemon, and it's a subject I am heavily conflicted about. When it comes to wild battles, I think Legends Arceus' method is 100% certifiably perfect. The fact that you see a Pokemon, approach, and throw your own Pokemon's ball at it to start a fight right there with no loading screen in between is the perfect evolution the franchise has been waiting for. It makes perfect sense, severely reduces downtime, fixes the mismatched battle background problem, and brings the franchise one step closer to how we imagined it as kids, all in one swift movement. Just take everything we already have here and make trainer battles work the same way, and we are golden. So, if I'm so in love with it, where's the conflict coming from? Well, get ready. It's coming from this. You're probably now expecting me to tell you that I don't like how Legends Arceus handles catching, but I'm actually not gonna do that. I'm instead gonna tell you that I'm pretty sure I have never in my life hated something from Pokemon more than how catching works in Legends Arceus. I know I am completely alone here. I can't find a single person sharing this opinion with me, but I cannot think of a mechanic more antithetical to what Pokemon is than this. The tagline of the franchise is "gotta catch 'em all, for Christ's sake," and I guess from a certain very, very literal point of view, that's exactly what this is. But from where I'm sitting, this just completely strips Pokemon catching of everything that has ever made it magical, all because the game arbitrarily wants you to catch ridiculous amounts of each one. It's basically just a souped up version of the Safari Zone encounters, but let me f***ing tell ya, I have never once in my entire life said, man, I wish all wild encounters were like the Safari Zone. You don't even have to see what you're catching. Come the hell on, guys. At a certain point, convenience waters down an experience so much that the point ceases to exist, and this is far beyond that. And the thing is, you obviously can still enter a battle like normal and catch the old-fashioned way, which a lot of people seem to think means that as long as they do that, I have nothing to complain about. But no, as far as I'm concerned, that's not how game design works. Being able to do this at all single-handedly wipes wild battles off the face of the earth. There is no reason whatsoever to enter a battle when you have the option to just get them for free with no effort. The only thing initiating a battle will do is risk your Pokemon taking damage and potentially make the whole process take longer. To try to compensate for this, they made it so that angry Pokemon have to be battled first, but I'm sorry. There is just no way you can possibly convince me that this is a good idea outside of a game where the Pokedex asks you to catch 1,000,000 of each species, which, just for the record, I also really hate and do not want to see in the classic series at all. The Scarlet and Violet website literally describes battling in order to catch as the true joy of the Pokemon series, which does make me super hopeful that I'll get what I want, because I agree, but more importantly, it reaffirms to me that it's the core of this franchise as a whole, and that refusing to include something in this concept that shits all over it is the right move. If we end up getting more Legends games in the future, then sure, do whatever fits the game best, but if the future really is combining both styles as we all suspect it is, I am standing firm in my position that it doesn't belong in the core games, and I will never condone its inclusion without serious changes. However, I do really like sneaking up on Pokemon and catching them off guard for bonuses, so I think that should stay, just exclusively for battles. I need a shower after that. And finishing off this topic, for the battles themselves, I'm honestly not taking very much at all from Legends, and for once, I don't think I'll get any complaints over that. To me, neither the new attack order system nor the agile and strong styles panned out well at all. They really just led to moments where my Pokemon were knocked out before I could even choose who to send in, and spamming the triggers on every single attack to see how the modifications would affect things. I couldn't possibly describe it as fun. And this is me finding it shit in a game without PvP. Competitive strategy would be a thing of the past if we kept it, so no thank you. I appreciate the effort to do something new, it was a valiant attempt, but it just didn't work. I really do like the ability to shuffle around your party in the bottom right though, so I would definitely include that, with the minor change that rather than just selecting whose Pokeball you're holding, it works like the classic party system, letting you set one as the leading man and shuffle around the others as you please in case of double or triple battles, which I would like to see more of, by the way. Not every battle has to be a single. Other than that though, I would just yoink the classic battle system wholesale. I really don't think it ever needed any changes. Plus, whatever gimmick this little thing in the logo ends up representing is more than likely gonna be battle related, so I'm sure that'll be more than enough to spice things up. In terms of little quality of life changes, I'm actually gonna take a decent amount from Legends Arceus. That ought to make sure you all know that I don't actually hate this game, I just heavily resent it. Theft number 1, the ability to change moves whenever you want. I've gone on record in the past saying that I actually dislike the vast majority of convenience changes Pokemon's made over the years, like the EXP share being automatic or the PC being accessible from anywhere, and while I confidently stand by all those opinions, I can't come up with any reasons for movesets to go back to the classic style. Only being able to equip 4 at a time is important for balancing, I wouldn't condone changing that, but it's never really made any sense that Pokemon memories were seemingly so flimsy that they would forget something they've done 489 times before just because they learned something new. I'll also take this opportunity to say that with this mechanic removing the need for the move relearner, I think there should be a new heavy emphasis on move tutors that can provide you with things like what used to be your level 0 moves. Theft number 2, choosing when to evolve. Throughout the Pokedex, you will find countless Pokemon that learn awesome moves that their evolutions either never will or don't learn for an extra 20 levels, and having to mash B after every level up is not only super annoying, but also makes me feel like I'm doing something something wrong. It makes me feel like my poor Pokemon wants to evolve really badly and I'm the asshole not letting them for the sake of getting Razor Shell a little earlier. Making it a choice that unlocks upon hitting a certain level is perfect. It makes that whole early move process easier, encourages it more, and still offers the original instant gratification evolution for everyone who doesn't care. Maybe you could even include an evolve instantly switch in the options menu, just to further prevent anyone from being annoyed. You can put it right next to the toggleable EXP share switch that will be there, right? Theft number 3, grafting the effort level system onto the effort value system. I never thought we'd see the day that you could essentially just view your Pokemon's EVs in straight numbers, but now that we have, let's never go back, please. I do think we should keep EVs the same as they've worked for the past 20 years, since they're a tried and true formula, but I better be able to easily raise, lower, and keep track of them. I repeat, easily. Hell, I'd even be down to remove IVs if I'm being honest and just leave it all up to EVs, but I understand that the combination of them is a big part of competitive, so maybe we won't quite go that far. Theft number 4, the ice type buffs, cause God knows they need it. For those who didn't notice, Legends experimented with a couple changes to various aspects of weather and status conditions, and I'm kinda split down the middle on them. In terms of the weather, strong sunlight boosts the speed of all grass types, and hail has been entirely replaced by snow, which boosts the speed of all ice types and interacts a bit with the new conditions we'll get to in a second. The strong sunlight one is weird to me because chlorophyll exists. Will those Pokemon be double boosted? Or is this just a way to help those Pokemon out in a game where they don't have their ability? Personally, I'm leaning towards the latter because I think there could be some serious issues with sonic speed bitches throwing solar beams at light speeds, so let's pass on that. As for the relationship between snow and hail, am I insane for saying that they should both exist? Just take the speed boost away from snow, buff Slush Rush to work in both of them, maybe make grass type moves weaker in it to add a weakness just like fire and water have, then give snow a move and ability that each start the weather up and we're set. Then, in terms of the naturally occurring, you can just pick whichever one makes the most sense for that route, or maybe even have icy routes switch between them at random intervals. Then again, it might be kinda weird for one type to have 2 different weathers, so if I have to pick only one, I'm going with snow. Why? Oh, I'm glad you asked, because the answer is Frostbite. Duh, I've always been a huge fan. Freeze has been arguably the strongest status condition in the series throughout its entire history, which leaves Frostbite with some pretty massive shoes to fill. So what is it? Does it manage that? Well, it's Ice-type Burn, and cuts special attack instead of physical. So yeah, it kinda does. Although special attackers have yet to ever return to the level they were at in Gen 1, they've still had it way too good for way too long in my opinion. As much as I would be sad to see Freeze go, since it is so iconic, I really do think this change is for the better, both for mitigating the number of battles ruined by luck and the overall health of the metagame. The other status is the replacement for Sleep, Drowsy, which is extra omega strange because that was the name of what Yawn did on the turn it was used, but sure, I'll pretend it doesn't bother me. Or not. Anyway, it gives you a chance to not be able to move on future turns, increases the amount of damage you take in general, makes you more likely to miss if it's snowing, and goes away due to electric stuff like Spark, Volt Tackle, and Wild Charge. So funny thing about this new version of drowsiness, it. This is dumb as shit. Bring back Sleep. And lastly, I'm not really sure if this one should really count because it's more of a request for the future of the franchise as a whole, so consider it a bonus, I guess. Theft number 5, Hisuian forms. Please do not make them extinct like I keep seeing people ask for online. I honestly think that's just a purely stupid idea. We've already seen a screenshot that has Hisuian Zoroark in it, so we do know that Pokemon Home is probably gonna work, but I really hope that that's just the version of Zoroark that exists in this region. A lot of people seem really hung up on the whole extinction idea, saying stuff like, well, if they aren't extinct, why haven't we seen them in any of the 8 regions we've played so far? And I think the answer is a little obvious. It's because they didn't think of them yet. By that logic, what are the odds that Kanto wouldn't have anyone from Sinnoh? The point of all of this is to say that I'm not down for losing all of these awesome monsters for the sake of lore in the same franchise that gave Raichu psychic powers because it ate f***ing pancakes. With that, I think we have most of our design specifications laid out, and overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how we've been able to mix in Legends concepts without completely overwriting what makes the classic series so magical. But there are still 2 very important things for us to discuss, and the first one is the story. So picture this, right? We open on darkness, and as your character wakes up and opens their eyes, what do they see? Naked Burmy. Alright, let's be honest, speculating about the story and hyper-specifics is completely stupid because we have nothing to go off of right now. Well, almost nothing. Throughout everything we've gotten up to this point, oranges and grapes seem to be a really common theme. Now you could just say, oh, it's because those are grown in Spain. Or, you could dabble in insanity. Out of all the times we see them, the one that stuck out to me the most was easily here, where they appear to be plaques on the wall. The first thing I thought when I saw that was, oh, those look like school crests. Then we see the player characters. Not only do they vaguely look like they're in school uniforms, a concept supported by the fact that we see other people wearing them too, but what do you know, there are the crests. Now obviously I don't know exactly how this is gonna work, but if I made a guess that I would enjoy, I don't think we're getting one rival this time around. I think we're going full X and Y and pull it up with a squad. The big difference this time being that they'll be split between the two classes, maybe even having which ones are your friends and which are your rivals being determined by which class you're in, and thus which version you have. Hell, if they take it far enough, this could even be the replacement for the evil team, since they, for whatever reason, seem to be a little desperate to mix that dynamic up these days. Rather than full-blown criminals running around screwing stuff up, you could have little delinquents from the rival class causing mischief, maybe even getting more and more extreme, closer and closer to an actual evil team as the game goes on. If we look at the shots from around our house, we can see in the distance what I'm assuming will be either the professor's lab or mansion, and it's got a purple roof, the opposite version color of the player character. Maybe the professor's son or daughter will be an important character that goes to the opposite class as you, or maybe for the first time we won't get a professor at all and you'll receive your starter from one of the teachers. School is just about my least favorite thing life has ever put me through, and yet somehow Pokemon has managed to make me so excited for the concept, I would be super bummed if they didn't end up doing something awesome with it. And now we are left with but one final aspect of these games to discuss, and it's one that I mentioned earlier. So, without further ado, let's talk about bullshit! The Japanese logos for X and Y had this little symbol in them, which turned out to be for Mega Evolutions. Sun and Moon, on the other hand, had this, which turned out to be a Z Crystal. And hey, let's not forget that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were teasing Primal Reversion the same way. Now the Japanese logos for Scarlet and Violet look like this. So what battle gimmick are we getting this time around? My guess is that it's definitely gonna have something to do with types, since we see this big ring shouting them all out in the middle of this important looking city. And if it is about types, there's really only so many things it could possibly be, so here's what I got. In Generation 6, we were introduced to Flying Press, the first ever move that is essentially double type, as well as Protean, an ability that lets you switch your type mid-battle. And in Gen 7, we were introduced to Delmise, the first ever Pokemon to approach being triple type. Call it a hunch, but I really think one of these three things is gonna be the new gimmick, primarily because I just don't know what the hell else it possibly could be. If it's the Protean or Delmise one, I think giving your Pokemon one of the crystals, of which there will probably be one for every type, will either change your type to that one or add that type to them. If it's the Flying Press one, I think it'll be an item you have to choose to activate like Z moves, and will either change the typing of the move you use or maybe even add that type on. Then, for example, you could give your flying type a fire type crystal, use it with your Brave Bird for a fire and flying move, absolutely decimating a poor little Paris for 16 times effective damage. All of these ideas would certainly be cool, but honestly, I don't know how down I am for any of them, purely because casual players can already struggle with some of the weirder type combinations as is, and not only could these step that up to the next level, but Jesus, even fans like myself might get our brains destroyed. That feels like a step too far, and honestly, I'm ready for a game that doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. We don't need a new gimmick every time. I just want solid, fun Pokemon, and for them to figure out this formula before they start blowing it apart. Though I suppose if I had to pick one option, I'd say let's get one crystal for each type, and giving it to your Pokemon lets them activate them like Z crystals, changing their type mid-battle. That way I could do silly stuff like set up with my Darksteel Bisharp, wait for the inevitable fighting type, then flip over to Psychic and throw out a Stab Psycho Cut. Keeping it so that everyone has to be monotype after using them might make them a little weaker than they should be, but you just know competitive players would find some crazy double or triple type combination that cracks the game wide open. And that's really the most important part. No matter what it is, just please make sure it's not gonna ruin the games for some people like Z-Moves and Dynamax did. Alright, I think that's pretty much it. Sure, we could probably get even more extremely detailed if we wanted to, but at this point I'm pretty confident that we've earned the right to safely call it quits here. So to close this out, let's go through one final rundown of every decision we've made so far. You know, I keep saying we, but it's like, you guys don't have any say in this. Hey, remember the time we removed features that Legends players liked? That was brave of us. So first things first, we've taken the structure from both series, letting you explore a large Legends-type world, just without loading screens, and going full-on Classic series in terms of battles and general story progression. Whether you're entering a battle with a trainer or wild Pokemon, it'll take place right there in front of you like in Legends, but without the gimmicks that made Legends combat dumb, like the styles and back-to-back turns. I'm thinking there's a 0% chance the dodge roll from Legends makes it into these games, so wild wild battles will initiate one of two ways. The first is like in Sword and Shield's wild area, where the Pokemon have to crash into you, and the second is like in Legends, where you can throw your Pokemon's ball at them and start the battle that way. And while you will be able to distract wild Pokemon with items and berries to sneak up on them like in Legends, you will have to at least initiate combat with them if you want to catch them, because we are not letting wild battles be erased like that. If you catch the wild Pokemon unaware, they won't act on their first turn, which will do wonders for catching guys like Abra. Like it or not, this is a compromise that I feel is fair and had to be made. The big change to battles will be in the form of these little crystals, which you can give to your Pokemon as a held item that allows them to change their type to the type of that crystal, similarly to Protean, but at the start of the turn instead of immediately before your move. As you travel around, you'll have a Legends-style party menu in the bottom corner, but functioning as the classic party system did, with one leading man who is in the Pokeball you'll be holding if you attempt to throw one at a wild. When viewing party members in greater detail, you'll not only be able to swap out their moves whenever, just like in Legends, you'll also be able to view their EVs in the same way you could view your Hisuian Pokemon's effort levels. At any time, you can crack open the options menu, which will include some crucial settings, the most important by far being the ability to turn off the EXP share. The option is purely beneficial so players can disable it if they choose to, but it's buried in a menu the average child won't care about, so theirs will be on by default and they won't even notice it. Just balance the game's levels around having the EXP share on all the time, and you have instantly created an automatic difficulty mode that fans will appreciate heavily. This is also where you'll find the option to enable Legends style of evolve when I tell you to. As an open world game, you'll be able to head off in any direction to find different Pokemon, trainers, towns, and side quests to take part in. Maybe you'll focus on battling today, or maybe you'll go looking for people to help, like a camper that needs a fire type to help light their campfire, or a flying Pokemon to get something down from a tree. Maybe you'll find a spooky mansion that someone got lost inside, so you'll have to make your way through to bring them back. The point is that there are a lot of different things to do other than just walk from gym to gym to gym. No matter what it is you choose to do, the levels of both wild Pokemon and trainer Pokemon will scale based on how many badges you've collected, so anything can be dealt with in any order without difficulty being overbearing or trivialized. Unless you're grinding, your battles will not be as easy as usual. HM obstacles like cut trees and waterfalls will return, put it down, but instead of having to teach your Pokemon a bad move that you can't delete, you'll instead just need a Pokemon that would be reasonably capable of accomplishing the task. If you have a Blastoise, you can surf on its back. If you have a Talonflame, you can fly around on it. The world will even be designed in such a way that multiple options could be used. Maybe you'll trudge up a waterfall to get the item on top, or maybe you'll have one of your Pokemon climb the cliffside next to it and you'll get up there that way. Hail has been entirely replaced by Snow, and all moves and abilities that interacted with it have been transferred over to it as well. Much like how Sun weakens water moves and Rain weakens fire moves, Snow will weaken grass moves, while also increasing the chance for moves to inflict Frostbite, the replacement for Freeze. Much like Burn, it ticks away at your health at the end of each turn, and any Pokemon inflicted with it will have their special attack cut in half. The plot of the game will be based around the different classes from Trainer School, Orange Class and Grape Class, or as I will call them, Scarlet Class and Violet Class. Instead of a classic evil team dynamic, the rude and mischievous students from the other class will be causing all the trouble, and the intensity of their mayhem will drastically increase as the plot continues. Rather than having one single rival, you'll have three that I've tentatively named Jose from the Violet class, Marissa from the Scarlet class, and Diego, the son of one professor/teacher who will always be in the opposite class as you. Depending on both which version you're playing and the choices you make based around which of your friends you spend time with, the outcome of their character arc and story will change. Give Marissa a bunch of attention in battles and she's sure to see what being a trainer is all about, but deny her that joy of laughing and growing stronger alongside her friends, and she may go so far as to start some mayhem of her own, or even join her devilish fellow classmates if you're playing the proper version. And those choices don't stop there. At certain points, there may be problems to solve in multiple places at once, leaving you to make a decision about which needs your attention more. In some cases, it may not feel that your choice was correct. And last, but certainly not least, new fossils. I know we just got like the best ones ever in Gen 8, but they're my favorite subgroup of Pokemon, and I'm sad every time they miss a generation, so let's just not do that anymore. In terms of what they could be, well, this whole thing has been about combining the smaller scope of the classic series with the sheer size of Hisui, so let's finally get ourselves a classic Jurassic Park-esque depiction of a raptor alongside an unfathomably massive Titanosaur. Not exactly sure how that would work with the battles taking place in the overworld, but I don't care. You can figure that part out. I have to do all the work around here, I swear. Oh man, is that it? Have I finally escaped? Who would have thought that talking about your favorite thing in the world could be so exhausting? Except for fans of sleeping pills, I think they get it. I really hope you all enjoyed this very different kind of discussion. It's not super often I spend so much time on something that's not even released yet. And I had a good time trying to balance the stuff that both types of fans want, while also making the games both good and reasonable. It could be argued that I've set the bar way too high here, but if you ask me if any of this was actually impossible, is that Burmy wearing clothes? At the end of the day, I'm sure Game Freak has gone through almost this exact process that I have, just with less yelling and pissing off of Legends fans. And there's no doubt in my mind that they'll do everything they can to make the best game ever for as many people as possible. Who knows who's gonna get what they want? All I know is that there are no games I'm more looking forward to right now than Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet. That being said, I still don't want Legends Arceus catching in that game, and here is my 3-hour dissertation as to why. You see, back at the dawn of mankind, Pikachu